Welcome to another episode of Growth Hacker TV. I'm Bronson Taylor, and today I have Camille Fournier with us. Camille, thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be chatting with you.
Yeah, this should be fun. I was actually telling my wife about your company yesterday, and she was like, "Ooh, that looks interesting."
Yeah.
So let's tell people, you are the CTO of Rent the Runway. So first, tell us a little bit about Rent the Runway. What do you guys do there?
Sure. So we rent women's designer dresses and accessories for short-term rentals. So you can go on our site, you find some dresses that you love, you pick a date. We will ship those dresses to you. They will arrive at your house or your business or whatever. You wear them, look beautiful, take pictures, have a great time, ship them back to us, and you're done.
All right. So is this stuff like big events like proms and weddings, or is it just you want to go out on the town and have something nice?
Yes, all of the above.
Gotcha. All right. So what year did you guys actually launch? When did the service start?
So we actually just launched 5 years ago. In fact, 5 years ago and 3 days or something like that.
Gotcha.
November 9th is our anniversary.
Very cool.
So the company has been around for 5 years, and it's been a pretty wild 5 years.
Yeah, well, tell us, like, what kind of growth have you guys experienced? I mean, I don't know what metrics you can, disclose, but, number of dresses sent out or users or something. How big is it now?
So we have grown to over 5 million members. So we have 5 million people who have come onto our site, created an account, and browsed enough to care about giving us their email address.
Yeah.
We have over 270 designer partners. So 270 designers who work with us to rent their products on our site, which is pretty awesome. We employ over 300 people now. So the company has really grown a lot. It's kind of crazy. We have, we have inventory. We have over 65,000 units of dresses inventory in our warehouse and over 15,000 accessories.
Wow.
So our warehouse is huge. We actually just moved into, or we're in the process of moving into a warehouse that's 4 times the size of our old warehouse. So we're going to 160,000 square foot warehouse, which is crazy.
Yeah.
We're going to have one of the largest dry cleaners in the United States when, we kind of do now, and we will definitely when we move, because we have all of these dry cleaning facilities, which is just amazing.
Is it fair to say that inventory really is the big engineering challenge that you have to deal with?
It's certainly, yes, it's certainly about at least 50% of the engineering challenge is just how do we manage that inventory? How do we make sure we account for it in the warehouse? So every order that we place, right, you place an order, you're getting a rental. So we ship it to you, and then you ship it back to us. So unlike traditional e-commerce, where mostly you're focused on getting things out to people, we're focused on also taking things back from people and cleaning them and inspecting them, sure they look great. And we have a whole staff of seamstresses and repairs folks who go in and, will hem dresses and resew sequins and things like that. So, it's a very interesting physical challenge.
Yeah, no, I never really thought about it, but it's almost like, e-commerce times 2. It's 2 markets at the same time. That really is a challenge. So what do you think has been responsible for that kind of growth? I mean, to have that many registered users, that much inventory, that many designers working with you, you guys are doing something right. You've seen from the inside what's kind of happened there. What's responsible for all this growth? What do you think?
I think it's a lot of things. So first of all, I think that, we are building a product that people want. Fundamentally, women know that they want to be able to experience new fashion. I mean, it's really fun to get a new dress to wear. Just is, even if you don't have anything to wear it for. And so we know that women, they want that novelty, many of them, especially when you're going to a special occasion. So there's already just that latent demand, I think, in the market. Also, that growing awareness, I should say, of designer fashion being something that people really want to experience, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone knows all of these designer names. We all watch the red carpet events. I've heard that the Oscar red carpet coverage is now more popular than the Oscars themselves in terms of how many people actually watch it, right?
Uh-huh.
That shows what people are interested in, right? We're interested in what gown is she wearing, not necessarily who actually wins the award. So I think that's true. I heard that recently, and it wouldn't surprise me.
I wouldn't know, so you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, there's just that latent demand out there that we are just tapping into. But of course, there's also just been a ton of hard work on the part of our business. So we've recognized a lot of things about our customers. We really understand our customers very well. For example, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of people think about fit as a problem. You hear about all kinds of products being launched where people are trying to like algorithmically decide your fit, right? So you have to measure this, or you get 3D scanned and it'll tell you exactly what fits. I personally am skeptical about that stuff, although I think someday it will work. I think it's a really hard problem to solve. Mm-hmm. We approached fit in a little bit of a different way with our business because we're renting instead of selling. So we have lots and lots and lots of people who can be experiencing our inventory. So we created a photo reviews feature where women can take pictures of themselves in dresses and write reviews. Mm-hmm. And boy, do they. Women want to help each other shop. They're actually really excited to talk about the dress that they wore. Was it tight in the bust? Was it tight in the hips? Mm-hmm. How did it fit? They share a lot of information with us about themselves so that other women can shop better. They can get products that are going to fit them. And I think that, our strong intuition for our customer and what is important to her has helped this business be successful because, we're not just cynically building a product that we think is going to make money. We're actually building a product that we all really care about and that we are the target audience, a lot of us.
Yeah. Would you say that really understanding your customer is just the number one lever that allows you to unlock all these other growth things?
I certainly think that is, yes. I think that is a huge, huge, huge part of it. I mean, without understanding the customer, that you're just, you're applying sort of cargo cult techniques in some sense. You're just like trying things, you're flailing, you're cargo culting, whatever. You have to step back and think about why is the person behaving this way? What makes her tick?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, that's something we hear on this show is that just the companies that really know their customer profile deeply, intimately, they know things that no one else knows. They're able to do things other people don't try because they think it's silly. They're just able to put together a product that makes sense, even though on paper nobody would have thought it would have made sense. So it just I see this trend so often now. So as the CTO now, what does your day-to-day look like? I mean, we talked about managing the inventory. That's 50% of it. Dealing with all of the code that kind of goes into that. What's the other 50% look like? What are the things you have to do on a day-to-day?
Sure. So a lot of what I do is thinking about the strategy, right? So, as CTO, it's a strategic role, which means that I'm thinking about not only where do we want to go as a business and what is the technology needed to support that. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if we were to go from 270 designers to 1,000 designers, or if we were to go from, however many unique styles to 10 times that many unique styles, what would that mean? What fundamentally needs to change from a technology and process standpoint so that we can support that and so that you can still have a great experience shopping on our site. So I spend a lot of time thinking about where are we going to be in a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, so that we're sure to be building software to support that. And then I also think about what can the software that we have built support that maybe the rest of the business isn't thinking about, right? So, if you're a marketing expert but you're not an engineer, you may never think about the potential that, this cool little toy that we built over here can actually be used to unlock this whole different market or, make this better experience, right? Mm-hmm. So we launched a thing called Unlimited recently, which is our subscription program, right? So you can subscribe to Unlimited. It's a monthly fee, and it's like original Netflix, right? Where you got 3 items. You could swap them at any time. Mm-hmm. And we launched this program this year in about 4 months. And what's interesting about this program is that we had built out the fundamental technology that made it actually fairly straightforward for us to implement and launch. So if you were to build a program like that from scratch at a business, it would probably take you way more than a year to really get it to the place where we got it in about 4 months with a small team, right? With a team of about 6 engineers. So, thinking about how can we build software that supports, business ideas and new businesses like that is a big part of what I think about in my day to day.
Yeah. I like when I first asked the question, you said that you're the CTO, so you have to think strategically about the business and, the kind of vision of where you're going. And I think some companies view the CTO as a strategic role, and some think they just have to make sure all the code works. And that, I think it's a big difference. And I like that you're thinking about things big picture, the vision, because you have to make sure the site is ready for the growth when it comes. and that you're using the code you already have to grow into new places. So I like that. I think a lot of companies should think about their CTO as a strategic role. I think that matters.
Yes.
At that level, it has to. Now, you, before this, were an engineer at Goldman Sachs. So you're at Goldman Sachs writing, I'm assuming, algorithms for, doing some kind of monetary thing. And then you had this chance to go to Rent the Runway in fashion. Very different world. Were you afraid that kind of the challenge wouldn't be there with Rent the Runway when you first had the opportunity?
Sure. No. Yes, absolutely. When I first heard about it, I was like, renting dresses, is that really going to be a technical challenge? And of course, the answer has been absolutely yes. I came to the business because I thought the business was amazing. And, I thought that the business leadership, the executive team here was incredibly strong. And in particular, Jen, our CEO, is just a brilliant, brilliant woman. And, I was like, wow, she's going to do amazing things. So I want to work for her. And so I came in and the technology at the time was kind of a mess, as anyone who worked there will tell you. So the technology was kind of broken and I thought the business was just a great business idea. So I said, okay, I can come in, let's fix this technology and let's go with it. And it has been, it's turned into it's been an amazing experience, right? Yeah. The problems are there. It is not a trivial business by any means, technology-wise or any other aspect, right? You have to be managing so many different pieces to make this business successful, right? You have to create a website that is beautiful and functional and that supports all of these crazy ideas that we have about how you can interact because, renting dresses is not traditional e-commerce. You're renting something. It's like a combination of the travel industry and the e-commerce industry, right? Yeah. Very, very few people, really nobody does anything like that, right? When you're renting a car, you're getting a physical thing, but you don't really care very much as long as it's the right size, right? Yeah. But you're renting a dress, you care very much about the right thing. You want to get the thing that you are most interested in. Yeah. And you want that black sequined cocktail dress or that long green gown, right? You don't want, some gown. I rented a gown. I don't know what gown. Just some gown's going to come and I guess it'll be okay, right? So it's, so there's that e-commerce element of shopping and browsing and understanding what the options are. But then there's that travel element of actually it's for a date. It's for an occasion. It's for an event. So, combining those two worlds is just a really interesting technical challenge.
Yeah, I'm glad it's not a problem I'm solving. It sounds hard. That's for sure. I've learned, though, that the things that look simple on the surface that delight customers usually are incredibly psychotically difficult right below the surface. That when you really get into the logic of what has to happen to deliver this great experience, it's mind-boggling. And so that's just something I've learned along the way launching multiple products is the stuff that looks complicated is sometimes simple and the stuff that looks simple is sometimes unbelievable. All right, so let's geek out a little bit. You guys do a lot with data and analytics. How important is data and analytics for Rent the Runway right now?
It's just incredibly important. We have always been a data-driven business. We are always looking at the numbers for everything we launch. The minute you launch anything, the question is, what happened? And it's well, okay, it's only been out for 5 minutes, so we don't actually know yet. But, everyone wants to know. We have dashboards all over the office, and I am constantly just watching those dashboards and seeing, operationally what's going on from a technology perspective, from an operations perspective, from a, sales perspective, how many people are on the site. I just kind of always want to know the stats about everything, and we are just always, checking in on those stats and using that to learn and grow and guide the business.
Yeah, that's awesome. Give me some specific examples. What are some things that data really became a game changer, that you launched something and the data informed what to do next, or something was happening you weren't expecting on the site and it made you change your focus? Give me some details so we can spark some ideas of how we can use data in ways we're not thinking about.
So here's a very recent example. So we have recently gone through an exercise of thinking about how we price things on our website. So for a long time, we had a very sort of standard way of pricing. It was a certain percentage of the retail price, and occasionally we would tweak it a little bit, but that was it, right? Fairly straightforward. And we did an exercise where we said, okay, wonder what would happen if we lowered prices on some things. Let's just see what happens. Instead of sending people a coupon, we'll actually just lower prices. And as a result, demand went up. Awesome, right? So more people were renting. Great. Now, you could take this one of two ways. You could say, okay, well, we should just lower prices on things because that will increase demand, and to just sort of, create a policy around trying to give people the lowest price possible. Or you could say, actually, what we really want to do is we want to think about what products people are very price sensitive on, and make sure we have a good spectrum of price points available to our customer for, different dresses, for different events, for different styles, so that we're really getting a wide, and we're still able to provide very high, high cost items that make rent a little more, as well as, things that rent for less, right? So we have a good variety of prices. So our analytics and data team actually spent a lot of time investigating what are the different characteristics that make someone more or less sensitive to a price, not a person, but a dress, right? So, if you're renting for a dress that is like a gown, you may be less price sensitive, for example, because that's a really big event. It's a gala. You want it to be absolutely perfect. You're willing to spend extra money to make sure you're getting absolutely the perfect thing. So instead of just, applying, doing a test and saying oh, wow, that had the good result, we got higher demand, applying that across the board, what we actually were able to do is be very thoughtful about it. So we built this demand forecasting algorithm that actually helps us understand, what are the demands for our various dresses based on how much they're priced right now, and should we, adjust the price at all to make sure we're getting the most out of it.
Yeah, that's a great example, and even goes back to that original point of knowing the customer, because that's the way you're using data to really get inside the psychology of the customer and know what they're thinking about the event that the dress is for. So it's really tying together data with the customer, which seems like kind of the role you have is marrying those two sides, the people you're serving and the tech that helps you do that. Do you think there's any room for intuition in a data-driven company? Can you come into work tomorrow and be like, I'm pretty sure this will work, let's just do it and run with it and spend a lot of resources on it, even though we don't know for sure? Or is that just not okay? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that you have to have both. So I like to say that, if you go too crazy with small testing and data, you do this sort of hill climbing to mediocrity thing, right? Where it's you get to a local maxima of value or whatever, but there's a mountain over there that you didn't climb at all because you didn't know anything about that mountain. Right? You're not looking for it. You're not finding it, right? So you have to have some level of intuition and understanding who the customer is. And this particularly goes for when you're thinking about new businesses, right? So very rarely, I think, do startups start because somebody looked at a whole bunch of data and they were like, aha, let's change that number. No, not really, right? It's oh, I see this market and I see this market opportunity, right? Jen and Jenny, they saw that women were wearing dresses once and never wearing them again because they were going to an event, they were being photographed, they were putting their photos on Facebook, and then they were like, nobody can see me in this again because I've worn it once. And they said, that's an opportunity, right? People want this product, right? And that was intuition. Now, once we had the intuition, of course, we are building on that intuition through a foundation of data. But the thing about data that I think is important to remember is that data explains what happened, but it does not necessarily predict the future. People always think that data is going to predict the future. That's not necessarily true, right? Data explains what happened, and you use that understanding of what happened to keep yourself grounded in reality. But that doesn't mean that therefore, the data tells you exactly what to do in the future. No, you absolutely have to have a sense of intuition of what is important to the customer, of where the market is growing, of how your audience is changing. At a startup, you have that early adopter portion of the curve, right? Those people, for example, may tolerate a really slow, crappy website because they really want to rent a dress. That's great. And I'm glad for those early adopters.
It's not going to help you cross the chasm.
Exactly. It's not going to cross the chasm. Once you get to that sort of middle portion of your adoption curve, you need to have a better experience. People are not going to be as tolerant of failure. And things are changing, right? The data that would have said something early on is going to say a very different thing later on. It's not predicting the future, right? So I absolutely think that data is, incredibly, incredibly important, but intuition and understanding and willingness to take risks and learn from those risks is also very important.
Yeah, what an awesome answer. I love that. I just want to print that whole thing out and like make it a blog post or something. I love what you said about, a startup begins with an intuition, with seeing a market, because the companies that succeed long term, they consider themselves startups. I think Steve Jobs even said, we're the biggest startup on the planet, It's like, and that's a and hundreds of billion-dollar company, and yet they want to have that view of their world because that's how you stay the front runner. And so I like that intuition, the startup mentality, the let's have intuition that shows us new mountains to climb, not just local maximums. That's awesome. But you have to have the data to get to the local maximums, which are also important. And so you just really need both. I like that outlook. Talk to us about maybe best practices around data. And this is kind of a vague question because I'm leaving it open for you. Is there certain ways to access the data that your team has? Is there certain best practices around sharing the data? Is there a meeting once a month about data only? Like, tell me some of the insights that Rent the Runway is found out about how to make data actually meaningful to the company.
Yeah, so here are a few thoughts I have on it. So first of all, I think successful data teams have to have an incredibly strong sense of product ownership as well. So we at Rent the Runway, we have actually, so ironically, I do not manage the data team at Rent the Runway. So we have a chief data officer, chief analytics officer, VJ, and he runs data engineering, data science, and analytics. And then I also don't run product. So we have a head of product, Sarah, and she runs product management, UI, UX design. And then I run product engineering and technology operations. So we actually, the three of us all work as peers. And it's been very interesting to me in this role because I've gotten to really observe those three teams and how they work well together and how they don't. VJ and his team, they care about the product almost as much as Sarah and her team do. And my team cares about the product as well, but I think that you can be a successful software developer at many companies without being like totally in love with the product. Like, look, I worked in finance for 6.5 years and I don't care about finance. And I was very successful and I enjoyed my job and I had a great time, right? So as much as I think that loving a product is great, I actually think you can be a successful software engineer and not be totally like product focused all the time. I do not think you can be a successful person in a data organization without that. And of course you can't be a successful person in a product organization without that, right?
Now, why is that? So, why is data different than, the other side?
So I think that data is different because you have to have a sense of what is important. It's really easy if you are a data person. You're surrounded by so many things you could look at, so many things you could investigate, so many reports you could write or draw, or conclusions that you can try to seek out, right? Because a bad data person is someone that's just like, oh, like I've got a report, I'm going to run this report, okay, I'm done. It's like, well, we might as well just automate that, right? You're just sort of waiting to be automated.
There's no insight there.
Right, there's no insight, exactly. Whereas, what we really look for in analytics is insights. And in fact, we were speaking of like, how do you get this data out to the company? We have monthly analytical insights meetings where our data team will actually, stand up and they will talk about some interesting things that they have observed about the company or that they've learned through the course of their analysis. And so it's so important, I think, for data teams to not forget about that sense of what is important to the customer and what is important to the business to help them focus, and to not just say yes to any request for a report that somebody asks, but to instead ask the question, like, is this really the important thing for us to look at, or is there information somewhere else that we should be investigating?
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Now, how many engineers do you oversee right now with your role?
So my team is about 55 right now.
Wow. So 55 engineers. All right. So and I want to talk about this for a minute because I think it might be helpful to our viewers. One of the big growth challenges, if you're successful with marketing and product and data, and your company actually does grow and you get revenue, it means you have to hire a bunch of engineers like you all have. That's a big growth challenge for a lot of technology companies. So I want to ask you, how do you find 55 engineers to work in a fashion technology startup? I mean, it's you're not recruiting them to Google, which is what they went to college thinking they were going to do. So how do you recruit 55 people to work for you?
Sure. So I think, a few different ways. So I believe in engineering leadership. I am very passionate about being a leader and growing leadership. And I think a lot of engineers are actually very hungry for that. A lot of startups run their engineering teams as sort of either like, you know, places where you just sort of send work to and it gets done and it gets sent back, or, you know, they're quote unquote flat teams and we're all equals, and that's great. But there are a lot of people that they want to figure out, how can I be a leader? How can I grow? How can I learn how to not necessarily manage, but take larger areas of responsibility and ownership? And so I really look for people that are interested in that because I'm passionate about that. And people that are interested in that often find Rent the Runway to be a very interesting place to work because we're a great place to learn how to take on bigger areas of responsibility and ownership, whether it's through management or not. So that's sort of one way. We look for people that are very entrepreneurial and that, like, you know, as much as I say that you don't have to care about the product to be a great engineer, a lot of our engineers are very product focused. And because we work very cross-functionally, so we have this pillar structure at our company where we have high-level strategic goals. For example, making a better customer experience post-order. Right? So you've made your order. You want to be able to like adjust your order. Right? You should be able to do that from your phone. You shouldn't have to call someone on the phone and wait on hold and talk to them. Right? You should just be able to easily do it, blip, 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 and be done with it. This was a big area that we knew we needed to focus on this year, and so we actually have a pillar around that, where the people in that pillar are focused on very specific goals towards that. So towards, you know, increasing that ability to do post-order engagement and increasing the experience there. And that team is not just engineers, it's not just product management, it's like engineers and product management and design and analytics and people who represent our customer service team and people who represent marketing. And they all work together like a little bit of a mini startup to think about, okay, what are our goals, right? Here's the high level direction that we need to be working in. How do we break that down into a roadmap of projects that we're passionate about, that we believe are going to improve this experience? So I think that because we as a company give engineers the ability, whatever their level, to be incredibly involved in the decision-making process and really like be working very closely with other peers, not just in engineering, but across functions and learning from that experience, I think that is a big driver for people in coming to Rent the Runway.
No, absolutely. I mean, if I was an engineer, that's the kind of environment I'd want to be in. Do you allow engineers to work remotely, or do they have to be on site there?
So for the most part, they are on site. We let people work from home a little bit.
You look like you don't like it or something.
No. I actually, so it's tough because like I think that different organizations can function differently with remote work. So I'm a big open source person. I work on a few different open source projects, and you know, I think that like sort of core technology infrastructure work like that lends itself extremely well to remote work. And I have friends that run companies where like half of their workforce is remote, or like Mozilla is a great example of a company where they have a ton of remote workers on their workforce, and they're building ultimately an open source product, and they have this great sort of very explicit workflow. It's really hard though for a company like Rent the Runway, where the product and the teams that are not just engineering have to work so closely together with engineering. It's important that you be able to like sit down and look at someone and talk through your differences and understand their point of view and collaborate. And I think that is still very difficult to do remotely. So right now we do have people that are pretty much on site. And I would like to get to a point where we can have more remote work, and I think there will be areas where we'll be able to support that. But at this point, it's just so important for us to be able to just quickly like turn to our product manager or turn to design and be like, hey, I have a question about this. Like, how should this really work? What if the customer clicks here? Like, what do we really want her to experience?
No, it's good. I'm almost seeing like a framework emerge from this conversation, because when we talked about the data and analytics team earlier, we talked about how they have to love product because insights are involved. And now it's almost that same idea. The people that are programming on site, the ones that need to be on site are because insights are needed. The ones that can be off site, it's not about insight. It's just about core infrastructure. It's like building the kernel of an operating system. No insights, just make it work. You know? And so it's like the more insights, the more discussion, the more cross-functional, the more together. The more infrastructure, the more, you know, other stuff, the more further away you can be. And I see, like I said, I see that framework kind of emerge there. All right, I have a couple last questions here. This has been an awesome interview. Two more. This is a question I started asking because I got fun responses to it, and people seem to like it. What are you working on today right after this interview at Rent the Runway? Like, even if it's boring, if it's a meeting, if it's awesome, like, what are you doing right after this?
Okay, so I do office hours every week. You've actually interrupted my office hours. So I do office hours every week where I basically open my calendar up to appointment slots, and people who don't report to me, who don't normally have one-on-ones with me, can book office hours, and we'll chat about whatever they want to chat about. So I have an office hours appointment after this where I'm going to talk to one of our engineers. I'm not sure what he wants to talk about, although hopefully it's about site performance, because I know he's been looking at that, and I'm very interested to hear what he has found. So that is what I'm doing immediately after this meeting.
Awesome. See, I'm learning how to, do cool things in a company from that question. All right, last one. What is the best advice you have for any startup that's trying to grow?
The best advice I have for any startup that is trying to grow is... Oh, that's a good question.
It's a hard one. People always get stuck on this one.
Right name. I have a lot of advice for any startup that's trying to grow.
Pick one. It doesn't have to be the best. Pick one.
I'm going to pick one. The big piece that I would say is the more time you can spend getting clarity around things, the better. I think that it's very easy for you to sort of just assume that things are going to work out. So, for example, you hire someone into a role, and you say, okay, you're running marketing. I have a vague idea of like what running marketing means, so you're going to be, I'm hiring you because you seem to be good at this, so this will all work out. If you can be more clear about, okay, no, but really these are the goals that we need our marketing team to achieve, and this is what we want someone who would be running marketing to do, the better that outcome will be. Mm-hmm. Or, I think another way that this manifests itself is like company values, right? So core values some companies take that very seriously. We are one of those companies that take core values extremely, extremely seriously. We have them plastered on our conference rooms and in our warehouse because we truly believe that core values are a really important part to creating a healthy company culture. And we took the time to think about what they should be and to write them down and to share them. And they're part of our review process, and they're part of our onboarding. And we're always in the back of our mind able to think about that, because that gives us a framework for who we want to be, right? Mm-hmm. Even as we grow and grow and grow, how do you remember who you are, right? How do you keep that sort of startup spirit, that value, whatever it was that started you, right? Whether it's like, we value, for example, happiness and positivity as a choice is one of our values, right? We value creating a workplace where people feel happy and excited to come to work, and they feel like they can get things done, and they're not going to be bogged down by a ton of negativity. Mm-hmm. Your values may be totally different, but having thought about them and written them down and shared them and really be clear about what they are, I just think that is the kind of thing that the more you do it as you grow, the better your outcome is going to be.
Yeah, well, that's great advice to end on, Camille. So thanks again for coming on Growth Hacker TV.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me.